Yo.
Here we are, back again. Blue Bloods, episode 36. Week 0 is behind us. That's crazy. Week 0 is behind us, which means we are full swing in the college football season. We're gonna obviously go back over week 0, even though it wasn't like the greatest slate of games. And then we're gonna look ahead to some storylines for week 1. I mean, Brandon, we've got 5 straight days of college football upon us.
Wait, not to brush over it too fast, but bro, it has been a year since we started the Blue Bloods College Game Time podcast.
Dude. Oh yeah, this is the anniversary.
Yeah, it's our anniversary podcast.
Yeah, it is. It's a 1-year anniversary. And you know what's crazy? is that something we talked about exactly a year ago on the first ever Blue Bloods podcast, we will be talking about today. It's this. We're going to ask the same question, and we didn't even mean for that to work out that way. But will Scott Frost survive the season? We talked about that on the first ever episode of this podcast because remember they were coming off the loss to Illinois.
Yep.
And then now we'll get into it. But
what just happened off the week in Dublin?
Yes. Wow.
I'm trying to just hit me when you said like, "Oh, week 0's behind us." I was like, "Wait a minute." This is like a year. Such typical guys. Like, women would have made such a big deal out of a year anniversary. We're like, welcome to another episode of the Blue Bloods College Game Time podcast. By the way, it's been a year.
Oh, yeah. It's been a year. Dude, it will. And I'm also thinking this was a year ago was when the Iowa State situation happened.
Yep. Yeah, the Iowa State coming in your DMs. I mean, we kind of came out hot.
That was crazy. Yeah. It was crazy. I'm like, I really haven't even been too active. Obviously, I was going toe-to-toe with salmonella poisoning a couple weeks ago, and then finally got that all out of my system. So that was crazy, by the way.
Yeah, what happened? We were on a time crunch. We got time today.
Yeah, so it was actually my birthday when I got it.
Okay.
And we had just recorded part 1 of our big season preview, right? Which was like almost 2 hours long. That was on, I think we actually recorded that on Monday of that week.
Yeah, it was on Monday.
And then the next day, Tuesday, was my birthday. So I ate at 2 places. That was it. I had some meetings like all day for little side hustle I got going. So
yeah.
Anyway, so I was in meetings. Yeah, side hustle becoming the main hustle type deal. Anyways, well, I'm in meetings all day. So one of those was at a lunch. Ate nothing like out of the ordinary. Then for my birthday, we went out to one of those hibachi grills, right?
Yeah.
And something was off with the lobster. I do know that. Something was off with the lobster. The thing is, though, my wife ate some of it too. I thought I was the only one that ate lobster, but my wife had eaten some too, and she was fine. So that night I get home, and it's one of those deals where like I'm freezing cold, but I'm burning up.
Yep.
You know, like I got feels sorry. I know I have fever. Like I know my body. And
right.
Just for me, just generally speaking, when I get sick, like I usually can tell what's going on. I usually shake it pretty quick. Like I know my body.
Right.
So, but then of course with COVID still being a thing and my daughter being back at school, like wanted to kind of take all that into consideration.
Right.
So I slept in our little guest room and COVID test was negative and I just got worse the next day. And I was like, man, like usually for me after, even when I had COVID, I mean, I did have COVID back in, I think 2020. And like, fortunately I was one of the ones that like, I had probably symptoms for maybe 12 hours and then I was fine.
Oh, that's nice.
So I'm like, man, this can't be COVID. So then my fever like really starts spiking, like it won't go away. And then I've got some other like stuff going on that I'm not going to say just for our viewers or listeners, I'll spare them the details of all that. But I got some other stuff going on that's not pretty. And another COVID test is negative. So I finally like, okay, I'm going to go to the doctor. So I go to the doctor. They test me for flu. They test me for COVID. Everything's negative. And I'm trying to say, hey, I think there's something going on in my stomach. Like, I know my body. Something's happening here. I can't get this fever to go away. I can't get some of these other things to stop as well. And I'm, like, miserable. Like, I'm just sort of, like, shivering in the doctor's office. I'm rocking back and forth. And the guy says, well, we're going to do another COVID test. and just go take vitamins and eat yogurt and something else. And I'm like, can you give me any medicine? Like something is going on. And he just would not, he didn't want to take anything into consideration other than COVID. And so I'm like, I had 2 negative in-home tests. I have a negative test in his office plus a negative flu test. And now they're wanting to send one off. And this was on, I think, Thursday of that week. And this is when things got awful. So I go home, no medicine. I think he prescribed me something for nausea, but like nausea wasn't the problem. Like nausea was a symptom of the actual problem. And I'm not a doctor, but I do know my body. So that night I got up to 103.9 fever, which that's like death. I mean, you know, I don't mean to joke about that, but like that's serious. So I'm laying there and I'm shivering. What's crazy is I have 103.9 temperature and I'm freezing cold. And then I got some other stuff going on as well. So I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm like praying for my life. I'm like, okay, Lord, if this is it. And I'm like, college football's about to start. Like, we got this podcast. Like, my family's dependent on me. Like, I'm sitting here, like, I'm going through all these things. Like, surely this isn't it. Surely. And I'm by myself in my guest room. My kids are upstairs asleep. My wife's asleep. It's like 3 a.m. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go take a freezing cold shower. And if the fever doesn't break, like, I'm going to drive myself to the emergency room. Like, I have to. Like, I'm legitimately thinking, like, I might die. Mm-hmm. And then what's crazy is as I'm like, I get my mind ready to do that, I fall asleep. So, like, next thing I remember, like, I wake up at like 7 a.m., like 4 hours later, and my fever didn't break yet, but, it went down to like 100.5, not 100 points. So I was like, okay, I can. By that point, I'd been running fever like 3 days straight. I was like, this is nothing to me.
This feels great, right?
Yeah. So, anyways, to kind of like speed this story up so we can actually talk about college football, my test still doesn't come back that they sent off. This is Friday now. Obviously, you go into the weekend, you don't hear anything from the doctor. So I've got this stuff going on from Friday to Monday because we were actually supposed to record part 2 of the college football preview, and I was like, dude, like I can't, like I you know what I mean? Like I've still got some stuff going on. By that point, the fever had at least broken, but I still had other stuff going on. I knew something wasn't right. I went to another doctor on Monday morning, and he was like, dude, you have food poisoning, and I think you have salmonella. He's like, I'm going to give you, and he prescribed me like this very intense like antibiotic prescription. And he's like, so you're telling me you went to a doctor and told them this, this, and this, and they sent you home and told you to take vitamins? I said, yeah. Yeah. He's like, and you've been miserable for the last 4 days? I said, yeah, exactly. So anyways, finally finished. I mean, last week I was fine, but I was dealing with some side effects from like, it was like a pretty intense.
Yeah.
It was like 2 different ones. One was 3 times a day. I mean, I felt like I was taking like antibiotic constantly, but like I finally took my last round last night, actually.
Oh, let's
I'm
go.
Back. I'm feeling good.
That's good.
I watched some college football, which always makes me feel better, but whew, okay.
Well, you know, that's not shocking. Funny fact, Corey just said this at like a leadership deal. Did you know, like, the average doctor only listens to their patient for, like, 18 seconds before they start talking?
Well, I believe it, because this guy didn't listen to me at all.
I'm hearing that, and I'm like, oh, that has to make sense. Yeah, the average doctor only listens 18 seconds to a patient's problem before they shut you out and start talking. That's a fun fact.
I don't even know if he listened to me for that long.
He probably did.
I mean, he came right in, and he said, we're trying to figure out what's going on with you, and he was like, you know, you don't have anything going on with your nose? I said, no. Nothing going on with your throat? No. Nothing going on with your chest? No. And he was like, And I said, something is in my stomach. Like, I didn't know, but I was so weak and like, I couldn't be, like, you know how I can get.
Yeah.
And like, I couldn't quite go to that level because I just didn't have it in me. I was just miserable. And anyways, but no, I believe it because he didn't. But anyway, so all right, you want to talk college football now?
Yeah, man, let's go. I've honestly been waiting for that story because we were like on a time crunch last week, and I was like, I'll just let him tell it to me on the podcast. I don't even need him to text it to me.
No, I mean it was bad. It was, and again, when you're someone that doesn't ever really get sick, and even when you do get sick, like I usually can shake it off 24, 48 hours. When I was hitting the third day in a row with a fever not going away, and that's what the other doctor saying, is like, because you're dealing with a bacterial infection, not a viral infection. And he's like you got to have something to get in there and kill that.
Yeah, you got to flush it.
So, and I know everybody's had different experiences with that type of stuff, but my goodness, I don't ever want to have to go through that ever again. Like, that was awful. Yeah, happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday, Trey.
But I'm also, to turn this into like a little inspiring piece, I'm also a believer, that's what I told my wife, because just to give a little bit more glimpse into my life, like my 1-year-old had COVID the week before.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So he dealt with COVID, and that was he handled it fine. He took it like a champ. But then right after that, I get salmonella poisoning, and it just really felt for a while like with our household, and then my daughter going back to school, things just seemed so like everything was breaking down.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what? That's what happens. Before you get a breakthrough, things break down. And so if everything's breaking down, you can sulk in the breakdown, or you can go, you know what, things are breaking down right now, but that's because I'm about to break through something.
Yep.
And so
keep pushing.
I don't know what that something is for me and my house, but we are
we're ready to receive it.
Yes, that's exactly right. Okay. So
great.
Want me to lay out the template?
There we go, man. Go ahead.
So if you've been a regular listener, you know our typical format is we'll usually recap a bold prediction. We'll talk about our biggest surprise, talk about our biggest disappointment from the prior week's games, and then we'll look ahead to some of the top storylines for the upcoming week's games. And so something we're going to kind of play around with this year is we're going to keep that same template, but we're also, instead of it always being a bold prediction, we were talking about this, B. Holmes, over the weekend, about having the biggest overreaction from the weekend.
Yes.
And that's fun discussion, especially early in the season, because you don't get any better overreactions than you do after the first few weeks.
Like the first 4 weeks of college football, man. That was like us with UCLA last year.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And it could go one way or the other. It could be a good overreaction, a bad overreaction. So I think what we're going to do for week 0 is let's do overreaction, surprise, disappointment. Then we'll look ahead to week 1. So you want to kick it off? Since I just spent the first 12 minutes
talking
about
man.
my
salmonella
battle
poisoning.
with salmonella poisoning.
Man, my biggest overreaction this week was Florida State. Now, I know this kind of goes a little off kilter what I talked about last week with Florida State potentially being my dark horse in ACC. But, man, and I said this last week on the pod because I actually listened to what I said last week to kind of make sure I was ready for this week. And it is true. Like, all of a sudden, Florida State has been on my Twitter feed. I don't follow anything about Florida State, but they are there for some odd reason. So I'm going to take this as a sign that I should follow Florida State this year because that's how Nebraska popped on my radar last year. And everyone's, like, super fired up. Don't get me wrong. They looked good. I did watch their game. I was at Buffalo Wild Wings with some people kind of watching them play. Oh, no, that was before that. Anyways, I did watch some of their game. And I was like, okay, that's great, but they played Duquesne. Like, it wasn't like they came out and did that against, like, even Arkansas State or NIU. Like, a MAC team at it's Duquesne. I'm like, they should have done that. So I think it was a big overreaction, Everyone's saying, I think we're back. Norval's turning this thing around, which I hope he does because I think college football's better when Florida State is good.
Right.
But we're about to find out real fast where they are this upcoming Sunday with LSU when they play LSU. And I think I don't know if it's a home game or not, but I just think that was kind of a bit of overreaction because they had 3 guys that went over 100 rushing yards, which was cool. But it's just game, man. Like, let's pump the brakes.
No, they are at they're in the Superdome. They're playing which basically at LSU, but it looks like it's a neutral site. I mean, neutral site.
No one plays at the Superdome and think that's a neutral site game if you're playing
not against LSU. Okay, so my overreaction, I've kind of gone back and forth on this one. So I've got a couple things. One is Nebraska. And let me say this. Let me say it this way. After Nebraska's first drive, That to me was the biggest overreaction of week 0. Because I'm not gonna lie to you, B. Holmes. Like, I drank a little bit of the Kool-Aid myself.
I did.
I saw they went right down the field. Thompson hits that fade. I'm going Whipple. Like, it looked just like the Pickett-led Pitt offense last year.
It did.
Dude, I had a tweet like ready to fire off.
Same.
And it was obviously a stab at Texas, because if you know me and you listen, like, anytime I can take a dig at Texas, I will.
You're gonna do it.
And I was it said something along the lines of, maybe Casey Thompson wasn't the problem in Austin or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, Trey? It's one drive. Like, let's just wait. But when I got on Twitter, I am seeing all.
Oh, it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
And I just said, well, let's just hold on a second, because this is Pat Fitzgerald coming off a 3-9 season, which we talked about last week. He's probably the most dangerous coach in the world now, because not just America. I mean, he went to Ireland, so
and did it right
in the world, coming off a 3-9 season. So I have to say, Nebraska after their first drive was one of the biggest overreactions. And then, hey, how about Vandy dropping a 60-piece on Hawaii? Like, I didn't see that coming.
I didn't
and
either.
I kind of jokingly have been very. Like, I like their coach. Is it Clark Lee?
Clark Leah, yeah.
Leah,
Clark
yeah.
Leah.
So I like what he stands for. I like just his disposition. I like how he's building the program. But he did say something at SEC Media Days that I'm going to misquote it because I don't have it in front of me, but it was something along the lines of, we know we will have the best program in the country at Vanderbilt. And then I made a little, like, meme where I did, like, the create a coach in NCAA 14, and I created Clark Lee. And I said, you know, what he said versus what he meant. You know what I mean? Because like, that's something you do in NCAA. In fact, I think you're actually doing it right now in NCAA 14 is turning Vanderbilt.
I was at one point. Yeah, I was. I left.
Yeah. See, even the video game. But I did not expect him to go drop a 60-piece on Hawaii. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, my goodness. Like, these dudes. In my mind, I'm going, this might be like the best season since James Franklin. They got that quarterback. Is it I
can't tell you.
I don't know. We mess up names time to time, but their quarterback balled out. And then I went and looked at their schedule, and I thought, okay, yeah, they may start 4 or 5-0, and then I'm going L. Like, I don't see them winning like any of their last, like, I think it was 6 or 7 games.
Yeah.
But I mean, the other thing to think about too is Hawaii is not good.
No.
Because they had was it Todd Graham last year?
Yep.
And I feel like half of the team transferred.
They did. They left.
So they got Timmy Chang in there as his first year head coach. I don't know if this is his first ever year, but I know it's his first year at the FBS level, and they've got a lot to sort out over there. And I think Vanderbilt, year 2 under Clark Leah, you know, it was a good win for them. But, yeah, there's definitely some overreaction there for me. I was thinking, okay, maybe Vandy will put together a 9-win season like they did with Franklin. And then I started looking at the schedule. I thought,
No. The Hawaii Stadium is nice, though, the new one.
It was.
It's really nice.
Very nice.
Makes me want to go visit.
Not as big as what was Aloha Stadium. Aloha Stadium, you know, where they used to play the Pro Bowl and all that. They had like 50, 60,000. I think this one, I mean, there's high school stadiums in Texas.
I was about to say, it looks like a Texas high school football stadium. That's what it looked like.
But the fact that it's in Hawaii and the scenery around it.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Gives it a little bit more pizzazz. So, all right, biggest surprise, B. Holmes, from week 0.
I think it's going to throw some people for a loop. Biggest surprise, man, Jim Moore and UConn. Though they didn't win against Utah State, man, this looked like a well-improved UConn team. Some people who may be listening to us don't realize that at one point UConn was pretty decent at football. I'm not saying they were all world, but they were pretty decent. They fielded some pretty decent teams.
They got to a BCS.
They got to a BCS bowl early
Florida
2000s?
State, maybe? Was it Florida State?
I can't remember who they played.
I don't either.
But then people forget like the years they had Khalil Mack, or they played Ohio State really close a couple years ago.
Wait.
We say a couple years ago, but that's like probably 8 years ago.
Khalil Mack? He was Buffalo.
Buffalo. What did I say? Oh, my bad.
UConn.
I don't know. I'm mixing up two stories.
No, we're good.
But yeah, UConn. Bro, Jim Moore has those boys ready to play, man. I don't know if you watched any of that game. It was a really, really good game. UConn came out the gate playing really well, played really tough. Jim Moore has those guys playing tough football. Looks like he's building a nice little culture there. So I was actually really shocked because they have pretty much, because didn't they flirt with, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they like almost go down to FCS, or they went down to FCS and came back up to FBS?
I think it was conference. I think they went independent or something like that.
That's what it was. Something weird. Yeah. They were just that terrible. And I think they did flirt with going down to FCS.
I feel like I remember something like that as well.
So sorry, guys listening. I didn't completely fact check that one, but I think they flirted with FCS, and now they're. Anyway, so I'll just say Jim Moore has those boys playing, man. I'm not saying they're going to win a bunch of games this year, but I actually like what he's kind of building at that program. They got some toughness. The offense looked good. I think they might catch some people by surprise this year, man. You can see the culture being built there, and I'm pretty impressive, man, because I don't think Jim Moore really got to ride off into the sun at his last stop. So to see him come, take over a struggling program and have those boys ready to play against Utah State, who won their conference last year, I think that was my probably biggest surprise.
What did they? Yeah. So speaking of that game, I got the last week's scores pulled up. Yeah. So they didn't win, but they played it.
They played them tight.
Yeah. Yeah. Like to your point, Utah State's got a really good program. And then Mike Wright is the quarterback I was referencing from Vanderbilt. I really wanted to look that up. I don't know where I was getting Smith from, maybe because I'm a Smith, but Mike Wright. Okay, so I'm up, biggest surprise. So mine, hey, FAMU and how they played Carolina.
Man, we were texting.
We were texting during that game. So, and here's the thing. Look, I think the score ended up being, it was 56-24. So if you look at the final score, it's like, okay, what are you talking about? But FAMU had like half their team was ineligible, including their best player, which is one of their linebackers. I don't know if he's like an edge rusher. I don't know the roster that intently. But here's what I can say. If it wasn't for an interception at the end of the first half that North Carolina was able to convert into a touchdown to go up a couple more scores, and the reason why that's so critical is because literally FAMU could have just ran out the clock and took it into halftime.
Yeah.
There would have been a point, if not for that play, there would have been a point deep in the third quarter where FAMU would have had the ball down 28-24. Now, instead, they were down 35-24 with the possession. But I remember I texted you. I said, man, if not for that interception right at the end of the half,
this would be a different game.
Like they're getting possession driving to go take the lead deep into the game.
Right.
And I think if you watch the first half of that game, how they played on both sides of the ball, really, I mean, all three phases. I mean, they pinned well, I don't know. I can't actually now. I'm mixing up another game from special teams. I think I'm thinking of Nebraska Northwestern when Nebraska kept getting pinned back into their own 5-yard line. Anyways, I thought that they played really well. FAMU did, and you know who they have next on Sunday? Orange Blossom Classic is Jackson State.
Yes, sir. So, I'll be watching that.
Yeah, and I don't know if the rest of the team's going to be eligible for that game or not, but just looking at what they had traveled and played against North Carolina, I mean,
played them tough.
And knowing how that game played last year, where I think it was a 6-0 game, and Jackson State's touchdown, I want to say, was a defensive touchdown. They couldn't get anything going offensively. But the other part of that game that I thought was interesting was Drake May, quarterback for North Carolina, threw, I think, 5 touchdown passes. That's actually the brother of Luke May. If you're a basketball fan, Luke May was hit that legendary shot against Kentucky to go to the Elite Eight back in like 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. And then North Carolina went on to win the national championship in basketball. It was the year Kentucky had De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk. And
Okay.
Luke, and Monk had just hit a 3 to tie it. And then Luke May comes down and hits a little mid-ranger with like 0.3 seconds left to ice it. And then they went on. I think they beat Gonzaga that year. So anyways, Luke May, a lot of college basketball fans will remember him in his March moment. And it wouldn't be the first episode of the Blue Bloods podcast if I didn't reference March Madness like I did a year ago. But Drake May, his younger brother, is the quarterback now at Carolina, and in his first start threw 5 touchdown passes. So I'm curious to see how he builds on that start and plays out the rest of the season. All right, disappointment.
Go Big Red, man. Those dudes. And let me not even say it's Nebraska. It's Scott Frost. This is why I'm really disappointed in Scott Frost. 2 things. One, I think we texted, or maybe I was texting. I don't know. I was texting somebody. I was texting a few people during that game.
Yeah.
The onside kick up 11. Like, the momentum is flowing your way. Yeah. And at that point I'm watching the game. Northwestern, they don't really have anything really established quite yet. It's like they're still trying to find their footing on their offense. Yeah. And it's like, if you just kick the football, stop them, and at least go up a field goal, you're up 2 scores, which ultimately you probably still win the game at that point. Because your offense was moving, your defense was hitting. It was just like, and I remember when he kicked the onside kick, I tweeted, why, ... Like, it just didn't make sense. And then 2, here's the other part of my disappointment with Scott Frost. When he said about his offensive staff, in this league, you have to be more creative. And it's like, Northwestern wasn't creative. Those boys just lined up in like the I form, I felt like, and just ran it down your throat. They ran for 2 bills on you. And then Helsinki, is it Helsinki? I want to say Helsinki, but that's from a TV show I'm watching.
Quarterback.
Quarterback came from South Carolina. I mean, he put up numbers. I mean, it wasn't like Northwestern did anything great. Like, they just played pretty simple football. We're going to give it to our running back, who isn't anything amazing. Now, I will say this, though. Northwestern has a phenomenal offensive line. Like, if you go back and look at the tape, they're just blowing those boys off the foot. Towards the fourth quarter, it was like you could drive 2 Mack trucks through the hole. But all that says my disappointment of Scott Frost, man. I personally think that onside kick call, Trey, was arrogance. I think he felt a little weird that he was no longer in control of the offense and had to I think he outkicked his coverage on that, essentially saying, I got to find a way to put the knife in him. Like, let me put the dagger in him. And you just kind of overthought basic football. It's like you're up 11. You got momentum. Just kick it, bro. Just kick it. Hopefully your defense stops them and you go score.
Well, and on that, I'm thinking, too, like, do you not have any confidence in your defense? And that's where I'm thinking, okay, maybe you're watching the game and no, he doesn't, because they can't stop anything. So fair enough. But is that the message you want to send to your defense right there in the third quarter? It's funny because my disappointment is also Nebraska, but I've got 2 different reasons than what you just said.
Okay.
The first one is up front. They got bullied up front all game. And the reason why that stuck out so loudly to me is because didn't Scott Frost just say something about his O-line coach and how many times they're puking and all that? And whether it was like in jest or not, the bottom line is you don't say something like that and then come out and
your boys get whooped,
just bullied, right? Now, granted, later in the game they were able to pop a couple runs out. That running back, is that JUCO? In fact, I remember you made a video about him, like back when he first committed to Nebraska. He played really well. I thought the offense, their scheme actually looked really good. It's just the second thing on my list that was disappointing is they can't catch the ball. They cannot catch the ball. And, I mean, Casey Thompson, he's hitting guys right on the hands, and it's just bouncing off. Northwestern, being a Pat Fitzgerald coach team, they capitalize on that type of stuff. So it seemed like every time the ball was in the air, you're going, it's going to be an interception. Yep. And then Northwestern would get an interception, and then they would convert that into points. And that's just kind of what they do. They win those small battles throughout the game, and then in the end up winning a game that
They shouldn't have win.
Yeah, maybe if the other team had have executed properly. Because that's the thing. If Nebraska just would have executed that entire game, I think they win by a couple possessions.
Yeah,
I don't even think it's a close game. And
I don't know if you saw the tweet from the offensive line coach from Northwestern. Did you see it?
Yes.
And to think we only puked 4 times all game.
You know what's crazy about him? Let me just go on. His name's Kurt Anderson. Okay,
Yep.
He's the O-line coach for Northwestern. He used to be the O-line coach at Arkansas.
Did he?
And he was awful. Like that's what's crazy. Probably one of our worst O-line coaches, because he actually replaced Sam Pittman when Pittman left to go to Georgia.
Got it.
And look, that was like a dagger to the heart of our fan base at Arkansas, simply because that was our heart and soul, was our O-line, and we knew when he left, not only was it going to impact recruiting, but it was going to impact how we played on the field. And then we bring in this guy who at the time was like a assistant, intern, coffee cup filler in the NFL. And Bielema brought him in and talked like he was about to be the greatest thing since, the next great thing, next great O-line coach. He came in a little arrogant, I think because he knew he was walking in the shadows of Pittman, and so he had a little bit of couldn't recruit for nothing. And if you watch our O-line play those 2 seasons he was there, I mean, it was like we almost got Austin Allen killed, and we just weren't very good. And then Bielema got fired, yada, yada. Well, what's crazy, so then he goes to Northwestern, and he has a top 10 pick. Or was he top 10? I don't know if he was top 10.
He's top 15, I think.
He was a first-round pick and one of the best, he's becoming one of the best O-linemen in the NFL. And then you watch how their O-linemen just punished Nebraska over the weekend. I'm thinking, wow, okay, that shows you it's like one man's trash is another man's treasure. Right. It's like it just shows you that he's not a bad O-line coach at all. He just was not a good fit at Arkansas.
Yeah.
For what we needed. And, but you send him somewhere like Northwestern where he's probably getting guys that he can have in the program for 5 years. It's not guys that are trying to, come in and leave or whatever. They can develop. And, don't get me wrong. Obviously playing in the Big Ten West isn't playing in the SEC West. And
for sure,
he's really because even Arkansas fans, I remember seeing that and thinking there were Arkansas fans that were like, wow, right. Oh my goodness, this he's really he's actually not a bad coach.
Right, right.
And maybe he took his experience at Arkansas, learned from it, and then went, okay, here's how I'm going to do this differently. But yeah, he's got those boys playing and producing,
He's another first round guy at Northwestern right now.
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. He's becoming one of the top,
it's crazy,
O-line coaches in the country. And I'm he was horrible at Arkansas. So, anyways. So, no. For me, Nebraska up front and their drop passes, that was probably my biggest disappointment of the weekend. Because I was pulling for those guys, man. I mean,
me too.
Their fan base, just generally speaking, has shown our podcast and our stuff a lot of love. I had my Nebraska shirt that
the guy sent us.
Our boy sent us, and I did. I was really wanting Nebraska to have a big year. And look, they still can. Getting back to that overreaction thing. They still can. It's not over. But this kind of segues into the question I want to hear your answer to: is does Frost survive this season?
No. Somebody tweeted. Did I retweet yesterday? Anyways, this guy. I love Twitter. He was like, the statistic, he goes, when over 50% of callers start calling in and saying, I'm a season ticket holder, and because of that, blah, 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 he goes, the chances of a coach making it are not high. Mm-hmm. When you start having over half of your season ticket holders calling in to have this man's job, I just don't, and I've talked to some, the guy I work with is a big Nebraska fan, and he's like, he actually had a very unique perspective. And I actually wanted to put this out there. He goes, because what is this, technically year 4 for Frost?
Is it?
Year 4
or
year
5?
He's like, it's really year 2.5. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He goes, well, you got to think, you come in after recruiting, so that's not really your first year. You have your next year after that, then another year, then you have COVID, which doesn't really count. So then you have, I think it's year 4, because then you have last year was like a full season. He's like, so it's really like 2.5. And I was like, that's a really interesting perspective. But I just don't, unless he just turns it around. I mean, we know they're going to win against North Dakota this week. Now, if they don't, well, he's done. I think he has to win like 8 ball games, man, to even be considered. He has to win 8 ball games.
Yeah, he's in year 5. Right
okay.
now.
So, yeah, he has to win 8 ball games.
I mean, that's the thing, though, too. Like, the Nebraska fan base is very loyal. I mean, it's probably the best, most loyal fan base in the country.
They're the nicest people ever.
And it's Scott Frost. I mean,
yes,
he's
the last dude to give him an Addy.
I think it's hard for a lot of Nebraska fans, not all of them, because obviously there's a huge portion of them. They're like, okay, we need to move on. But it's hard to separate from that, because even me as a non-Nebraska fan, just a college football fan, like I want him to be successful at Nebraska.
Exactly.
Like where else? Where does he go from here? I mean, look, he'll rebound and be just fine. But you go like this, you got to think was like the pinnacle for him. You want to see him be like the 20. You want to see him be the Pat Fitzgerald at Nebraska, right?
Absolutely.
Who's there, 15 years from now, winning, bringing them back, doing big things. I don't know, man. It kind of weirdly resembles what happened at Arkansas after Petrino. In that, now look, it's been a lot longer, but I'm just talking the kind of the past 2 coaches. They brought in Mike Riley, right? And that was a very odd. I think that's who replaced Bo Pelini. And look, Pelini did some good things. Honestly, had it not been for the amount of money that was at stake for a Bama-Texas national championship, they win the Big 12 that year. I mean, Colt McCoy threw the ball it was the dumbest decision ever, and the clock ran out. Game over. That was the year with Sue and those guys.
Yep.
But there was too much money at stake with an Alabama-Texas national championship. Both teams, I believe, were undefeated. Are you kidding me? You are not gonna mess that up.
No way.
So anyways, my point is Pelini, you had Burkhead, they had some quite what they were in the 90s, but they were
some dogs.
Then they bring in Mike Riley, and I don't know, just an odd hire, I guess. And he had that one season where I think they won 9 games. They did really well, but then I think he was out after year 3.
Yeah, it wasn't long.
So then they bring in Frost, and it's like we're continuing. He's gotten more rope, obviously, because of who he is to Nebraska. But if you look at really what he's done, there's no reason he should still have that job. He hasn't even made a bowl game. That's crazy. When you go 4 straight years without making a bowl game at Nebraska, that's inexcusable.
Yeah.
And that's too premier of a program to not at least be bowl eligible. And where I say it reminds me is because it was kind of like Bielema Morris was who Arkansas hired after. So it's kind of in reverse of what Nebraska did, but it was like with Bielema, I was saying the same thing. I remember going it's really year, because he had to come in and he had to clean up this and this and this and our APR and our grades, and he did this, and now we got guys graduate. Now we got this, and look how close we were. We were losing games the same way Nebraska's losing games. Oh man, look, we almost beat Bama. We lost by 1, and A&M beat us every year, but we were usually up by 2 possessions, and you're kind of always making these excuses, and then I think it was after we just got annihilated by TCU his last season there. His last season I was like, we got to get rid of this guy.
Yeah,
and then Morris, that was a very short-lived situation. I don't know what that whole thing was. But then you get a guy in like Pittman, and it shows you, oh, wait, so we go from not winning an SEC game in almost 3 years, and now we're winning 3 in one season.
Right.
Oh, now we're going 9-4 in year 2 and winning a New Year's Day bowl and, actually competing with the top teams in the SEC.
Right.
And I think that's what's going to happen for Nebraska. I think he survives the year. I just don't think he will be the coach next year. it doesn't seem like a Nebraska way would be to fire him. I mean, unless they just like tank it. I mean, unless they just go like 0-6 or something.
If they lose next week to North Dakota, that man's getting fired in the middle.
Yes, yeah, something extreme like that. I don't think they will.
I don't.
But
either.
if they even if they go 6-6, like I just don't think getting bowl eligible.
He has to win 8
enough.
or 9 games. Really, I think he has to win 9 games. He has to win 9 games and be like in the hunt for the West. I mean,
to
stay.
Because, dude, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, but Mark Stoops, like, show me a coach, show a coach who isn't happy with where they're at without them actually saying they're not happy with where they're at. I'm just saying, if there's any year a team could poach him, I believe it's going to be this year. He's probably going to win 10 games, 9 or 10 games, which that's just crazy to think. He's at Kentucky, and like 8 to 10 wins is the norm now. He built that from scratch. I just can't imagine what he could do with the resources and support for the football program at a place like Nebraska.
Well, I have a dark horse for that name, though.
Okay.
Chris Kleiman.
Kansas State. And
former North Dakota State.
Yep.
That's my, dark horse of a name. I can't even take credit for that. Somebody, I forgot who tweeted. College Football Home tweeted that. And I was like, oh, I would have never thought about that, but I think that would be, to me, that would be my dark horse. If they couldn't get Stoops, they might be a door they knock on.
What about the guy at Wyoming that actually is a Nebraska guy who was the one who built that North Dakota State program? Because, Kleiman came off as Craig Bowl, I think is his name. I might be saying it wrong.
I'm looking it up now.
He's the one that built the NDSU, like one, and then handed it over to Kleiman when he went to Wyoming.
Yeah, Craig Bowl.
Yeah, wasn't he I think he was an Osborne assistant for a lot of years.
Yeah, I'm looking him up right now. Craig Bowl, it's his 8th season at Wyoming. Yeah, he did. He was in Nebraska GA from 1981 to 83. Then he coached linebackers from 95 to 99. Then DC from 2000 to 2002. Then went to North Dakota State from 03 to 13.
Yeah, and turned him into a beast.
And then, he's doing good at Wyoming too, though, man. It's Wyoming.
That's what I wonder, though, is has he done enough at Wyoming to justify that? Whereas you got a guy like Kleiman, I don't know how to say his name, but he's at Kansas State. They're a lot of people's dark horses to win the Big 12 this year.
Yeah. He's doing all right at Wyoming. He just signed a contract extension, though. And it's over in 2024, though. So the buyout wouldn't be bad. And based upon Nebraska, they love nostalgia, seemingly. Yeah. I could see them knocking on Bowles' door. That would make a lot of boosters and season ticket holders happy.
Yeah, and when he'd bring some toughness and he'd bring, what they're... I have someone who told me this theory, who grew up in Nebraska. It's a lady I used to work with. Big college football fans. And husband went to Tennessee, so he's like a huge Tennessee fan. But she was telling me that the big downfall for Nebraska, she feels like, is one, you just don't have the same corn-fed, blue-collar type kids. Because she said Osborne used to get kids to come in and walk on.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And then use his scholarships on, what was Frazier? Wasn't he from Florida? He's from one of the coasts.
Right.
He's from the East Coast or the West Coast. And we went and got him. And I don't know. She had a very, I'm going to mess it up, so I don't want to try
I've heard that.
But talking about there was a system that was in place where you got all your beef up front because all those kids, and those were hard-nosed,
Nebraska
dudes.
boys. Yeah.
And she's part of it's because the whole agricultural scene is just totally different than what it was back then.
True.
In our society now. But then, two, whereas Osborne was able to get all these kids to come in and walk on and develop into premier players and then utilize scholarships elsewhere, that's another thing that's not happening. So, I don't know, man.
We got to think. They used to be able to do under-the-table deals back then way easier. No way those guys are just walking on for free. Osborne was boosters are finding another way to take care of those kids. I mean, I know Nebraska faithful love Osborne, but if he's doing it that way, which I've heard some stories like that, like, yeah, guys used to just walk on and they were tough dudes and they were starters. I'm like, oh no, listen, they were getting taken care of some way, somehow, something was going on. Doesn't discount it. They won, but it's like the gray shirt rule, bro. Saban uses it all the time.
Yeah. Well, I keep coming back to Stoops because if you look at his Kentucky teams, I mean, that's like exactly what, if you're a Nebraska fan, like that's what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
You want this hard-nosed, like built up front defense, like strong up front defense. And then offensively, he kind of bounces around. He kind of, like we've talked about that a little bit. He has a little pro style RPO, kind of an NFL scheme that's creative enough to like, be somewhat of an equalizer because he doesn't obviously have the best athletes. Recently, he's been going and getting someone from that McVay, Shanahan tree and bringing them in. I don't know. We'll see how it hangs out. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, so Frost, I'm with you. It's got to be 9
Good luck,
wins.
Man.
That's the
good luck.
I think what's frustrating, especially if you're a Nebraska fan, like they should have won that game. That should have been
a blowout.
It's kind of like the year Morris's first or second year when they played Vanderbilt and they got whooped. And you go, gosh, there was a time when you could look at the schedule and see Vanderbilt and mark it a dub. If you're Nebraska, you're going, like there was a time when I could pull up the schedule, see Northwestern and go, okay, that's a win.
Yeah, it is what it is. We're going to beat them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care.
Let's just get out of that game healthy. That used to be the thing. Just get out of the game healthy.
Anyways. Okay, well, what other week one? I mean, we got 5 straight days of college football coming up. I can't wait. Like, do you want to start with Thursday and just kind of work our way through the weekend? Let's work our way through the weekend. And then we'll call it a day. Okay. Let's pull up these Thursday games. What do you got? What are you most looking forward to on Thursday?
Purdue versus Penn State, man.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Purdue. I mean, we've been texting about it. You've been super high, and we briefly texted last night about it. I want to be all in on Purdue, but I feel like they do so much better as the underdog role. I think Braun will have those boys ready. But I'm interested to see what Penn State we get. Mm-hmm. James Franklin obviously got that big contract extension. So they're kind of stuck with him. Sean Clifford's coming back, I feel like, for like an 8th year. I think it's like a 6th year. They lose Jahan Dotson, but they got I think an ESPN top 150 running back coming in this year. They got some talent on the outside. Defense, Penn State never really is bad defensively. Like they're actually always good. It's just can the offense produce? I think if it's a close game, I actually like Purdue in that game. It's like Jeff Brom kind of has his guys ready to go. I like Aiden O'Connell, 6th year. He really balled out last year. They brought up some great guys from the transfer portal. It's hard for me to say that because like Penn State can be really good when they figure it out. I just don't think they've really figured it out over the last, and I would have to go look, but I don't know if they really figured it out over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. I'm all in on Purdue this year. Like it's getting kind of scary because I'm worried now that if Penn State wins that game Thursday, it's going to completely deflate me, almost as if one of my own team lost. Like I'm so high on Purdue this season. Like I think the table is set for them to make a run. Like for the Big Ten title. I love Jeff Brom. I've said this before. I always have an affinity for like Petrino guys. I love that Petrino philosophy offensively. Jeff Brom has taken that and really made it his own. It really is one of the more creative offenses in the country. And this arguably is their toughest game to start.
The biggest game. Yep.
I mean, I think they actually have to travel to Wisconsin, but that game comes at a point where they could really be rolling. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what Wisconsin. I don't know what Wisconsin we're getting this year. I mean,
that's true.
I have no idea. But Purdue last year they turned that corner. They've got so much momentum. They've got who could arguably be the top quarterback, second or third quarterback in the Big Ten. I don't know that he'll surpass Stroud, but I'm just high on them, and I'm so looking forward to that game on Thursday that, like I just said, I'm very worried, like they're gonna lose.
Yeah,
and it's gonna completely deflate like these huge hopes I have for them this season because, like I said a couple weeks ago, they don't play Michigan State, they don't play Michigan, they don't play Ohio State. Like
it's a great schedule.
And I say Michigan State very loosely because, again, I don't know what we're about to get out of them, but they don't play them. Their toughest team they're playing from the East is week 1 against Penn State.
Yeah. I'm interested. I think, but the other game that day I'm actually looking forward to is the backyard brawl, West Virginia versus Pitt. And there's some good because it's Keaton Slovis is starting for Pitt, who played at USC. JT Daniels, who played at USC, is now the lead quarterback at West Virginia. Graham Harrell, who was both of their OCs, is now the OC at West Virginia. I think, and Pitt's ranked. So I'm really interested to see what that game's going to look. I feel like we've been talking about JT Daniels for like 7 years. I mean,
because keep in mind, everyone, like he came to West Virginia from Georgia. So
right. And went to Georgia from USC. Because I don't know if people remember, JT Daniels is the kid that was the Gatorade, I think, National Player of the Year, and went his senior season of high school and went straight to college. Like, played his junior year, dominated at Mater Day. It said, instead of playing my senior year of high school, I'm going to graduate early, go to USC, and still played as a true freshman when he should have been a senior in high school. And I think threw for like 1,600 yards and 12 touchdowns before he like tore his ACL or something. So I feel like we've been talking about the JT Daniels kid for forever. So this is clearly his 5th year. I think that's going to be a really, really good game. I actually think I picked West Virginia to win that. I think they're going to upset Pitt week 1. I mean, after losing everything, because Pitt lost Whipple, they lost Pickett, they lost Jordan Addison. I don't really know who else is on that team.
Well, in West Virginia, their coach, he's an air raid guy. In fact, I think he played at Kentucky during those Tim Couch years with Al Mummy and Mike Leach. Mummy, the head coach, Leach, the OC.
Yep.
So he's an air raid type of guy, and we'll see how, like you said, Harrell coached at USC when JT Daniels was there, so we'll see how that goes. And then, of course, Pitt, the storyline with them is, what does their offense look like after Mark Whipple? Whipple's offense would have looked a heck of a lot better against Northwestern at Nebraska had the receivers caught the ball.
Right.
You got to execute. So, but as I'm looking at the rest of the week, Tennessee, curious to see how they look. Their offense has a lot of hype around it right now, and they're playing, Ball State. So we should see if it really is what everyone's making it out to be.
They should run them out the gym.
You got Minnesota? They're playing. Yeah, I mean, Wake State. Forest is playing. I think Penn State, Purdue, and then the backyard brawl, Pitt, West Virginia. Those are definitely the 2 top games, unless your team is playing Thursday, because gosh, there's like 16 games. That's
insane.
It's crazy. And you said this before we started recording. I mean, this is arguably a better slate of games than what we just had week 0.
It is. I would have rather watched this on Saturday than what we watched.
Well, let's move to Friday night.
Yeah.
Because the number 15 ranked Michigan State is playing Western Michigan.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see them.
The reason why I'm also interested here, have you seen that documentary about the Michigan State rivalry?
There's a documentary.
There is, dude. And I just saw it. I actually watched it last night. It was on Big Ten Network. It's called Divided We Stand, maybe, is what it's called. Okay. And they talk about it from the football and basketball perspectives. And I think it might be a couple years old because Beeline was in it and he was wearing his Cavaliers polo.
So that's like 2 years ago. They
talked through like the 1990 game with when Desmond Howard like caught and then dropped the 2-point conversion. They went through the whole history of it. Then like the is it D'Antonio? How he just hated, and then of course Mike Hart, little brother.
Yeah,
kind of talked about the last.
Like a little brother, yeah.
And so they have a lot of different player perspectives. I was watching it, like I wonder if Brandon has seen this because
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It really dives in, and you really see how badly Michigan State, like, almost just wants to be.
They do.
On the football side of things.
They do.
How badly they want to be seen as like this true.
They do.
Like, rival.
They do. Here's the thing about that. Like, no, and they are little brother. They'll always be little brother. Yes, they have recent success, and they always throw that at us. Like, look at their last decade. I'm like, bro, like, no one cares. Because, like, here's the thing. As a Michigan fan, I can say this honestly. Michigan probably has like 5 rivals. So, like, every year you have to worry about playing. You're everybody's rival. You're Michigan State's rival. You're Notre Dame's rival when you play. You're Ohio State's rival. Penn State doesn't have a real rivalry, so who do they want to beat? Michigan. Minnesota, they're our rival. Like, everybody in the Big Ten doesn't have a real rivalry outside of us. So it's like everybody's just like, well, F Michigan, we want to beat them. So the thing with Michigan State fans, like, it is what it is. Like, and here's the thing, like, living in the state as long as I have, growing up around it, like, I have family that went to Michigan State. I don't think I had any family that went to U of M. I should have. But I think the thing is like, there's this elitism about Michigan fans that everybody hates.
Cause you see that in the documentary.
Yeah, and there is a true elitism. It's, you know, some people are going to slaughter me about it. I don't care if they listen. But it's, growing up, I can just talk about my experience. Growing up, I went to Cranbrook, which is like one of the top prep schools in the country. Like, we were the kids.
We see 8 Mile. We know all about Cranbrook.
And it's a real school. So, like, I went there. It's a whole thing. And, like, we're the kids that go to Michigan. And here's the thing. Like, Michigan's like our fallback school at Cranbrook. It's like, if I don't get into an Ivy, I'm going to Michigan. And it's Michigan is just kind of known as, like, the, like, you know, we're the preppy kids, but we're, like, really good at everything. Versus, like, Michigan State is like, yeah, you know, have to get it off the mud. And it's just kind of like the thing where I applaud them. They've been able to keep on this thing for ages, at least since I've been alive, like this chip on our shoulders. We need to prove Michigan that we're the best team in the state and everything and the best university. And I'm like, at the end of the day, like, no one's like, oh, Michigan State, you went there? Like, it's like, oh, okay, cool, you went to Michigan State. But if you tell somebody you went to Michigan, it's like, oh, wow. You know, there's just this, or if you tell somebody you're a Michigan State fan, no one's like, oh, you know, you don't get instant trash talk. It's like, oh, that's good. That's good. The moment you say you're a Michigan fan, like, you get hate from all, like, it's just whatever, man. Like, they can have it. I don't care. Like, it's whatever. I hate Michigan State. I'm never going to pull back from it. They're annoying. I hate the fact that they've had some recent success on the football field, because on the basketball side, Michigan's definitely been dominating that series over, like, the last decade. So, and that's supposed to be their thing on top of that. Like, they're supposed to be the basketball school, but Beeline and Howard has proven otherwise. So, you know, whatever. Screw them, bro. That's just what I'm gonna say.
So I'm curious, though, like, Western Michigan,
they're good normally.
Can have a sneak. Yeah, I was going to say they're a team that can kind of sneak up on you on any given year. So I'm wondering how that game's going to play out with them versus Michigan State.
Is LSB still the quarterback at Western Michigan?
I don't even know. Let me see if I can find out, like, in the next 90 seconds.
I'm trying to pull it up. Because he actually,
what's his name?
I think it's LSB. What's their quarterback from last year? No, he's gone.
Hollenbeck.
He graduated.
Okay.
He graduated. Because he was actually really good last year. I gave my thoughts on Michigan State, bro. They should have went 7-5 last year. Kenneth Walker made them a 10-win team. And I can't hate on it. The dude was that good.
And that never quit sort of Mel Tucker, taking the woodshed mentality. I mean, you gotta. There's something to be said for that. Yeah.
Whatever.
I like him. I know. I'm like, it's funny because until I met you, like, my relationship with you has made me much more fond of Michigan.
Yeah.
I always leaned on the Michigan State side because I was a huge fan of like the Flintstone team.
Yep.
And look, most of it comes from basketball, right? Because of Izzo and the Flintstones and those teams I loved watching. And they always had like this gritty just style of play and they're tough. And then as I got to know you, I was like, okay, no, I'll be a Michigan fan. I'll be an honorary Michigan fan. And I like Harbaugh. I mean,
I love Tucker. I've said that, though. I said it last week. If Tucker wasn't a coach at Michigan State, I would be all about Tucker. I'm just over it, man. Like, I'm just so over it. I can't believe they gave him a 10-year extension. And don't get me wrong, man, he might prove that I think we got to remember he came in off a COVID season. They were decent. And then he struck gold with Kenneth Walker last year. Like, let's see what happens year 3, 4, 5 before we start deeming him like the next great thing in the Big Ten.
Well, the extension worked. I mean, it was a perfect storm because he is turning them into,
potentially a playoff competitor,
a playoff contender. And then all these big-time jobs start opening up. So, and of course, his name was associated with all of them. I mean, you and I were making videos with the LSU and Florida State. Because we were talking about if Norvell didn't survive last season after they had just lost to Jacksonville State, but then you had LSU, you had Notre Dame,
There's some big jobs opening.
So it's kind of like, okay, we better, as you say, back up the Brinks truck and keep this guy. Okay, Friday night, though, I've got my eye on this Illinois-Indiana game.
That's going to be good.
That's another team I said. I don't see them competing for the Big Ten, but I did call them as my bounce-back team in the Big Ten after last season with Bielema coming in, bringing Lenny Jr. in this year. And offense looked good. I mean, didn't look just like phenomenal and blow you away, but it was good. And I'm curious to see how they build on that win against Wyoming, going into a road Big Ten game against a team who's been decent the past few seasons. It's not the same Indiana that you and I grew up on where it's like, that's a win. They've actually had some good teams. And so I'm curious about that one. And then I think the other Power 5 matchup is that TCU at Colorado with
Sonny Dykes opening game, man.
And then Colorado's quarterback is actually from is a Texas boy from Melissa, Texas. So
really?
Yeah, I'm assuming he's starting. He started last year, so we'll see. I'm not like super plugged in with Colorado though. So don't get me wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're starting quarterback. And then we get to Saturday, which clear your schedules, everyone. I mean, make up any excuse you can. You are not doing anything Saturday. It is the week 1 real opening weekend of college football season. We've got several top 25 matchups, one of those being a top 5 matchup. Just in a nutshell, B. Holmes, run me through what you're most looking forward to. Obviously, I know you're going to have your eye on that 11 a.m. Colorado State at Michigan. In fact, that might be the 11 a.m. game I'm watching now that I'm looking at the schedule.
12 p.m. for me. We're on the East Coast. But I think the game I'm actually looking forward to most that most people are kind of overlooking, I feel like, is Utah versus Florida. I think this has huge implications on the college football season, man. Everyone's no longer talking about Utah. The big talk out west is USC. Is Lincoln Riley going to have these boys playing right off the bat, getting ready to compete? Not even for the Pac-12 title, getting ready to go for college football playoff contention. And I think that's fueling Whittingham's fire. Like, I think the Cam Rising is a Heisman dark horse. I mean, yes, they lost Devin Lloyd off that team. Is it Devin Lloyd, the linebacker they just lost? But, man, Whittingham, man, he has those boys ready to go. And I think, is it an away game? I think so.
Yeah, it's at Gainesville.
It's in Gainesville. Like, I think, man, if they can win that game and win it handily and showing that they still have that toughness, I think, man, that's going to set the tone for Utah. Because Utah, to me, man, they're a dark horse as far as racing for this college football playoff. Like, I'm starting to like them a lot. And I love the trajectory Whittingham took them from the Mountain West to the Pac-12. And now they've been able to climb the ranks in the Pac-12 where, man, they definitely don't recruit the same type of talent that the USCs and the UCLAs and everybody else gets. But, man, year in and year out, those boys are fighting for that Pac-12. And if you look recently, man, the Pac-12 should be unnoticed. They shouldn't be surprised. And I think they're kind of getting overshadowed from Lincoln Riley, Dan Lanning, Ohio, Oregon's playing at Georgia. There's a lot going on. And I think that's perfect for them. They're kind of slowly sneaking underneath the radar a little bit. And I think they win this game, and it sets the tone for what they're going to do this year.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and go on record and say this, is that if they don't win and Florida wins that game, my overreaction for next week's episode of the Blue Bloods podcast will be whatever Florida Gator Nation does.
Yep.
Because I'm telling you right now, you want to see an overreaction for a team that's desperate to be
relevant.
Yes, again, it's if Florida beats Utah, that'll be my overreaction of the week next week. What I've got my eyes on. Top 25, number 19 ranked Arkansas Razorbacks hosting the playoff, coming off a playoff season, number 23 Cincinnati Bearcats. The team we have, I'm just not worried about this game. And maybe I should be. But part of it's because of the team we have, and part of it's because of everything I know Cincinnati lost.
Right.
They lost 2 corners to the NFL. One was a first rounder.
Yep.
Like top 10, I think, Sauce Gardner.
Baby.
And then Ritter, who seemed like he was their quarterback for like a decade. And I like what Arkansas has coming back. I mean, we've pretty much got our entire offensive line. We're going to have one of the, I think by season's end, we'll be considered one of the best stable of running backs. We've got a returning starter and quarterback, KJ Jefferson, who some are considering, potential Heisman candidate. I don't know. I'm not ready to go there yet.
Yeah.
Not because he couldn't, but I need to see if he continues to take the steps. Like if you watch KJ Jefferson against Rice a year ago, which was our first game of the season, and then against, Mizzou, which was the last game of the regular season.
Yeah.
Totally different quarterback. I mean,
agree.
He took some massive strides last season. If he's like continuing on that trajectory, like there's been no, hiccups or step backs or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I'll probably join in on that. But a big part of getting in that Heisman discussion isn't just stats. I mean, you got to win, and it's a tough schedule. It's a tough road for the Razorbacks, but I do think they beat Cincinnati. I'm very much looking forward to that game. It's nice just for the what's the word I'm looking for? The perception, being able to open your season against a team coming off a playoff berth,
for sure,
who's also ranked in the top 25. But I don't want to say it's a slouch. I mean, Fickle's still there. He obviously has a very successful program. I think Cincinnati again has a great chance at being that top group of 5 school.
Yep.
Whether they win or lose against Arkansas, but God, I don't know, man. Like I'm really high on the Hogs coming into this year, and it's different than most years. It's not the beginning of the season homerism. It's like, no, like we got a squad right now. And we patched some holes through the transfer portal like we did a year ago. I mean, our entire defensive line last year were all transfer portal guys that signed in like April. And so we kind of followed a similar path. We got Drew Sanders from Alabama. Jalen Catalon came back. I mean, like there were just some key things. I'm a little worried about our receiving group without Traylon Burks. We did bring in some guys for that. I'm just, you don't know till you see him on the field. And Traylon Burks, you talk about production. He was. I do think we have a different approach this year. I think we'll be more, we'll rush for 3,000 yards as a team. That's a prediction I'm putting out there. And we just need receivers to make plays when we need them to. And that's the thing I think could take away from KJ's like Heisman push is I don't know that he's going to have huge numbers throwing the ball because I think we're going to be such a run driven team. But other than that, obviously you've got Oregon, Georgia. I think Georgia blows them out. I just do. And not like 63-14, but I think it's probably
42-28.
Yeah. 31. I don't think Oregon scores 28 on Georgia, man. I think it's probably more like 31-10, something like that.
Goodness.
I don't see it. I'm not seeing it. And it isn't, yeah. And then you got Ohio State, Notre Dame.
It's going to be a freaking dog walk.
Top 5.
It's going to be a dog walk, man. Here's the thing, man. In my heart, though, Trey, like I want to believe, but I just don't see. Here's what I'm most looking forward to about that game. How does that defense look early on for Ohio State? I think if they come out and they look like some dogs and they're playing tough, I'm probably already going to be like, well, it was fun that we beat them last year. I'm more interested to see what Jim Knowles. I know what that offense is about. I know what that offense is going to do. I want to see what Jim Knowles has that defense looking like against Notre Dame, and let's kind of see what happens. And then hopefully those guys get out of there healthy. That's probably going to be the biggest thing for them is can they get out of that game healthy?
All right, so let me ask you. Well, I'll ask you this after we get through the rest of the weekend. So we move into Sunday. Sunday we've got Jackson
LSU.
State, FAMU.
Oh, we got the classic.
I think they play earlier in the day.
Yep.
And then Florida State, LSU.
Yes.
Let me talk about that Jackson State FAMU game real quick.
It's gonna be a good game.
I'm curious to see this Jackson State offense.
Mm-hmm.
I watched actually a lot of Jackson State last year.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna say I watched every single game every single week, but I watched a good amount. And their offense struggled a lot. Particularly the two games I'm referring to were against FAMU to open the season. So you go, okay, well, it's the open the season. They're still figuring it out. And then that game in the Celebration Bowl against, you remember that? South Carolina
that was a tough
State.
game.
They pretty much exposed them. So here's what Deion Sanders did. He brought in a guy who is cut from like the air raid tree.
Okay.
Because last year's guy was more of a run and shoot type.
Got you.
Type guy. He was in the June Jones. I think he was actually June Jones' offensive coordinator at SMU. And then I'm pretty sure Deion Sanders Jr. was at SMU somewhere in that window. And so that's maybe where the connection happened. But he's no longer there.
Okay.
But he was, I don't think he's there at least. But some of the kind of the differences just like very surface level between those two offenses is kind of what you're asking players to do. The run and shoot asks a lot more out of their receivers.
Yep.
Right? Because it's all about running the right route. It's a very, it reminds me of like basketball where it's very read and react.
Yep.
If he's shading me this way, then I run this.
Go this way.
If he's lined up this way, then I do this. Right? And the quarterback, it's more of just I'm going through my progressions and then I'm trusting everybody runs the right route based on what the coverage shows, and I just hit the open guy. And that's why they would say, like with Colt Brennan, rest in peace, but guys that played in that system, quarterbacks never really evolved in anything in the league, and they kind of got the whole quote-unquote system quarterback, the Timmy Jennings, the Colt Brennans, I think SMU had a guy even as well. But then you look at the receivers, guys like Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, who played in that system. They go on and they become like really good NFL receivers because they're asked to do so much. Whereas the air raid, it's a little bit different in that, and you know this just because you played in a variation of this in high school, but you're more reliant on the quarterback to get you in the right, space, right read, right check, whatever it is. And so I'm not saying I'm not there, right? I'm not on the whiteboards, but I would imagine for Jackson State, one of the biggest shifts that's happening from their offense from last year to this year is maybe the philosophy now is to put more on Shedeur, who will be a sophomore quarterback, versus the receivers running these right routes. Because there were times last year where it's like the receivers couldn't get open. Like it was crazy. It was like, and then Shedeur, of course, is running for his life. And so you never really knew, okay, who is this on? Like who is this on the line? Is this on the quarterback? Is this on the receivers? Well, now I think running kind of this air raid philosophy, they got Travis Hunter, who every time I see him, though, he's in a boot. So I don't know if he's actually playing or not when I've seen him on like some of the social media pages. But we just saw what FAMU could do defensively, and they held their own without half their players. I think they were only missing like 3 or 4 starters.
3 starters.
And I don't know if they were all on defense, but their best player was. And I don't know if he's going to play or not, but I am very curious to see this Jackson State offense, and I'm not so sure they beat FAMU, even though this is like their year to really make some noise.
That'll be interesting. I'm going to watch that game.
And then you go, LSU, FSU?
Yeah, which I'm interested to see what Brian Kelly's going to do, man. How's LSU going to look at with Brian Kelly? You know, there's been a lot of talk. He's not had the most positive offseason, but the dude's been recruiting his behind off. LSU is never without dogs on that team, man. They always got guys. I mean, they lost some guys to transfer portal, but I'm interested to see because Brian Kelly's team they could score. I'm just interested to see what LSU would get and then what Florida State, because we saw what they did against Duquesne, but I'm like, can y'all do that against some flat out athletes that can, as Malcolm Kelly says, we some athletes. Can we see what they do there? So now that'll be an interesting game for me to watch.
And then of course Monday we cap it off with Clemson and Georgia Tech at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Should be a blowout.
It should be. It's crazy because I'm seeing a lot of like upset alert for Georgia Tech. I think people are just writing Clemson off because they had a seemingly down season a year ago.
10-3.
I know, 10-3 down year. And everyone's kind of they're writing off that quarterback who I actually think is probably primed for a really good season.
DJ? Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like what Georgia Tech? Like what have they
done? They don't even recruit Georgia well. Like, what have they done that makes people think they're going to upset Clemson?
And do they have did that guy come back for a year or
who? Well, they lost their best. I think so, but they lost their best player to Alabama.
Jeff Collins. Oh yeah, he is. Jeff Collins is back. He's 3-9, 3-7, 3-9.
Yeah, no way, bud. No way. I'll eat my words if they do that this week, but there's no way. Clemson will out-athlete them to a win.
All right, last question, then we'll end this episode as we're creeping up to an hour and a half.
It's our podcast. Who cares?
I know, whatever. I needed to tell everybody my bout with salmonella poisoning. I'm putting that on the resume. Salmonella poisoning survivor. What game? I think I had to ask this for the whole weekend. Are you most looking forward to because you think it will be the best game? What game are you most looking forward to? And then in parentheses, it also will be a good game that does not feature your team over the weekend.
I think most people probably expect to pick like the top ranked team matchups, but I don't think, because I think every top ranked game is going to be a blowout. Like I think Ohio State's going to run through Notre Dame. I think, like you said, Georgia's going to beat Oregon handily. I think Arkansas is going to do really well against Cincinnati. I'm going to go with the first thing that popped in my mind is Purdue versus Penn State. Like, I know that's the Thursday game this week. Big Ten implications. I think Aiden O'Connell is about to have a coming out party this week nationally because it'll be the game on Thursday. I think it has the potential to be. I watch a lot of Purdue football, actually. Like, I like Jeff Brom. I watch a lot of Purdue football. It's never not exciting. Like, I don't know if anybody remembers the game they played against Ohio State last year. Like, I watched it to the end because I was like, every time you thought they were down and out, boom, they'd score, and you're like, oh, my goodness, they might be right back in this thing. I'm actually probably more excited about that game than any other big game on the slate because of how that affects the Big Ten, because it's a Big Ten conference game. How this affects really the Big Ten West, because if, like you said, if Purdue wins, they could run they can get pretty close to running the table, and really just kind of be like this year's Cinderella story. So to me, that is the game. I think I would say second would be LSU, Florida State. Two huge programs that are kind of like they're coming off some pretty bad years. Bad year for LSU because they just won a natty not too long ago. But those would be the two games, honestly, outside of the Michigan game that I'm looking forward to watching those.
I mean, you literally took the words right out of my mouth. So it's funny because when you said Purdue, Penn State, I was like, crap, I'm over here looking at the rest of the games because like I'm so in on Purdue right now. Like I am looking for I can't wait to watch that game. Like
me neither.
I feel like I'm sitting down, like I'm looking forward to my own team is what's crazy. And then I was like, well, and I'm looking through here and I go, I was like, Florida State, LSU. And I'm thinking, it's that Sunday night matchup.
It's a good game.
Is Florida State going to be able to run the ball against LSU? You know, like there's just so much about that game. I think it could be a good game. Yeah. And then you're like, I think my second will be Florida State, LSU. So I'm like, where's my other one?
My bad.
Because dude, I mean, I don't think Ohio State, Notre Dame. I want to say that one. And obviously when you got 2 top 5 teams, week 1, night game. As bad as I want Notre Dame to be competitive there, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't, man. I don't.
Okay, I got one for you. I got one. Rice at USC. Just from a curiosity standpoint. I want to see the USC offense.
Yep.
That's not a game like I'm going to be locked into, but like maybe watch the first quarter of,
right? Or
catch some of on like my third screen. That might be on like my iPad screen.
The third screen is back.
It is back. Or maybe that Jackson State game. I mean, I just went on a whole tangent about the offense.
That'd be a good game.
And,
That'd be a good game. Yeah, that'd be a really good game. I think that's probably about what I'm excited about. I mean, obviously, I am excited about Michigan. I mean, we're back this week, so it's going to be interesting.
Dude, I think they could run the table. I meant to text you that last night. Michigan?
Okay.
I was looking at the schedule last night, and I'm going,
it's possible. It's not a crazy schedule.
But then just as quickly as I say that, I go, Colorado State.
Yep. You.
I mean, I don't think they will. But I'm just saying, like,
I agree. As a Michigan fan, I agree. I don't sit too high on my pedestal thinking we've turned a corner. I'll end my part of the episode with this Michigan thing. If you didn't know, Jim Harbaugh came out in typical Jim Harbaugh fashion. Week 0 college football, 6 p.m. when everyone else is talking about college football is back. Jim Harbaugh drops the biggest news probably to come out of Schembechler Hall in a long time. Hey, we don't have a starting quarterback. They're both playing really good. Cade's going to start game 1. JJ will start game 2. We'll pick a starter week 3. Now, I had some initial thoughts, and I held off on tweeting because I was like, let me really think about this. I have a theory. Hear this theory. I think I'm pretty darn right about this theory. So here's my theory. Everything rises and falls on leadership. All offseason, outside of Ohio State, everybody's pretty much said Michigan should run the table. Harbaugh, what does he always want to guard against is complacency and entitlement. He's really big about that. I don't want anybody to get comfortable. No one should get comfortable in my program. I do not deny I think Cade McNamara right now is the better quarterback. I think Jim likes Cade right now because if there's any quarterback that reminds him of himself, it's Cade McNamara. Now, if you look at these out-of-conference games in the early part of our schedule, it's pretty cupcakey. So how does Jim go from, instead of my guys being cupcakey, taking it easy, how do I instill a new fire into my team this year? Well, Cage Wire, like me, one thing he would hate is the fact that people are questioning, should he be the starting football player, the starting quarterback at the University of Michigan? I know he should start. Everybody, Trey, I pay a lot of money for insider stuff, all this. Every person that's gone through Michigan, even the Big Ten Network when they did their campus tour, flat out said, Cade McNamara, best quarterback on the roster. The ball does not hit the ground. So my thought was this. Maybe Jim was like, to make sure we don't lose our fire, to make sure the leader of this team, make sure the team plays up to the standard I wanted to play, let's do a little experiment. Because here's the truth, guys. JJ was playing no matter what. We saw that last year. We were going to see it a lot more this year. So I figured Harbaugh finally probably went, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to let you play. Then, even though I know JJ's not ready to take your spot, I'm going to make you feel, I'm going to stoke something inside you because you're wired like me that pisses you off so much. Because I'm still going to name you the starter because you're the best quarterback. That you'll hold your team so accountable. Because you're going to be like, there's no way, excuse my French, there's no way in hell some kid's going to come and take my spot and take my team from me. And it will raise the level of play because Cade will be so fired up where he's like, if you are underachieving, I'm calling you out. If you're not doing your job, I'm holding you accountable. I think it was a leadership tactic by Harbaugh. When I really thought about it, I was like, because it makes no sense. Like, Cade's that guy, and JJ does give you something. Don't get me wrong. He does give you some things Cade doesn't give you.
Yeah, different element.
He gives you a different element with the wiggle, and I do think the explosiveness of the offense ceiling raise when he's there. But what does Harbaugh value more than anything? Ball security, making smart decisions, getting the ball down the field, putting points on the board. That's what he values. That's who he was as a quarterback. I think this was a leadership tactic. I really think this was, let me raise the level of fire on this team, which starts at the head, which is my quarterback. So I'm going to silence all of this. I'm going to make him sit a game. And I'm sure he'll play part of that game that JJ's going to play, But I'm going to let him sit and watch somebody be in his spot that everybody's clamoring for. Because he's wired like me, I think that's going to fire him up so much that he's going to have an electric season. That's just my theory. I thought long and hard about that. I went back and forth. I went, maybe it's... Then I was like, it doesn't make sense because JJ was going to play anyways.
Yeah, I was thinking it was to keep JJ from transferring, but now that you lay all that out, it's kind of like, I mean, he's going to be the starter next year anyway.
He's going to be the starter next year. JJ's not transferring. He makes $1 million plus a year. Yeah. He's not even the starting quarterback at the University of Michigan. He's not going anywhere. Like, what backup quarterback in the country right now is like, I make $1 million a year, and everyone loves me, and no one blames me for anything. And I'm going to get some packages. Like, he's going to – I think the split will be 70-30, honestly, when it comes down to snaps at the end of the year when you look at it. So he's going to get enough, and he's going to get a lot of playing time because I believe we're going to blow a bunch of teams out, and he's going to be able to get his run, and everyone's going to be, the JJ, this is what we need. I think this is more so for Cade to be like, this is yours, but how bad do you – because Cade has that Brady thing. Like, I'm going to prove you why I should be the starting quarterback. Harbaugh's that way. Brady's that way. The greats are normally that way. I'm not saying Cade McNamara is going to be great, but I think this was more of a leadership ploy to raise the level of play because you got to think we don't play anybody till like week 5 when we go to Kinnick Stadium at Iowa, which we saw what we did to Iowa last year. So realistically, we don't play anybody till like week 7. I think it's when we play Michigan State. So how do you make sure your team like comes out the gate hot and you're firing at a high level right out the gate? Oh man, you put your team leader in the mix and say, go get it.
I like, though, it's interesting how he gave McNamara, is it McNamara?
Yeah.
Colorado State. Meanwhile, JJ gets Hawaii, who just gave up a 60-piece to Vanderbilt.
Right.
And it was a dual threat QB that diced them up, which is what JJ is. So, because what I'm thinking this is going to get interesting. Let's just say Michigan wins, 31-17, right? Let's say the offense struggled a little bit, not heavily, but I would imagine Colorado State's going to be
ready to play
decent this year. I think not good enough to beat Michigan. And then JJ goes into that Hawaii game and just torches them.
Well, then you got to play JJ though. I think I think it's a win-win for Harbaugh though. Like I think either McNamara elevates the game, which I think from what I've been hearing he has, and he puts it on display, or JJ just blows it out the water and it's like, well, I win.
Oh, dude, I just remembered. I forgot about that. So Colorado State's got a first-year head coach, and his offensive coordinator is Matt Mumme, Hal Mumme's son.
Oh.
And they were together at Nevada. Jay Norvell and Matt Mumme, they were together at Nevada the past few seasons. So they're at Colorado State now. Oh, that just piqued my interest a little bit more for that Michigan game. Not that Michigan's going to struggle to defend the air raid. I'm looking at their Michigan. Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, I think there's nothing to it but to do it at this point.
Nah,
we'll see everybody
here
next week. Thank you for listening. Enjoy your 5 straight days of college football. We'll probably do a Tuesday release next week just so we can get through all of
the games. The Monday game, yeah.
And, yeah.
Here we go. It's on. Peace.
Peace.